This week on Q&A, our guest is Lionel, whose real name is Michael LeBron. He's the host of the nationally syndicated radio program called The Lionel Show and author of the book Everyone's Crazy Except You and Me, and I'm Not So Sure About You.
Lionel, the opening sentence of your book is, "I hate conservatives." Would you like to explain?
That's about it. That covers it. Well, I think that this term is probably one of the most misused, misunderstood terms that I come across. In fact, in my 20 years in talk radio, I came in right when Rush Limbaugh really hit it big. And I was familiar with the term, but not really. It became used by people to connote a rock-ribbed, all-American, God-fearing, Bible-respecting, all-American, right, heterosexual, good type of person. The antithesis of this, the antipodal person, of course, was the dreaded liberal. I had no idea what they were talking about. I didn't know who these liberals were. I wanted to kill them myself. I mean, they were against everything that we stood for. And what I found out was that I was just inundated with a bunch of lugheads who co-opted that term. The more and more I realized it, the more I realized that the term conservative connoted something far more interesting, which I share a lot of. The conservative I speak of is the cookie cutter, bumper sticker, echo chamber, RNC acolyte. The Republican, in essence, not really somebody who wants to conserve much of anything. And so as far as that person goes, it was a pretty provocative chapter. But that type of person, I loathe. I would like to add something if I could. If I could append the book, I found out that there is the antithesis of this is the far, because it really, that connotes, I think, a far right wing. The far left is probably just as insane, but in other directions. And if I could, could I tell you what the difference between far right and far left is? It's a very simple thing. We have a camera here. Is this here? Very simple. Here is far right. Here is far left. That's it. One is, you've got to be kidding. The other one is, oh, stop, please, relax, take it easy. That's unrealistic. Far right is, you can't do that. That's mean. That's not right. It's not. You must tolerate. Far left. Oh, stop it. Grow up. Pay attention. Both of them, and I think if you push them far enough, they'll meet eventually. I think I've done enough talking, Brian. Thank you so much, and good night.
What is a lawyer like you doing talk radio?
Well, if you really go down the list of who's a lawyer, I mean, just in terms of politics and TV, there's a lot. I never, ever wanted to do this. I mean, I do now. That wasn't my goal. I happened to be a caller and found out that I could use the airwaves of people and their license and their facilities to basically spew whatever I wanted to say, using a variety of accents and calling multiple times. I had 3 rules as a caller, if I could tell you. The first one is be the first caller. Set the tone for the day. Be the first one. Number 2, never talk about what the host is talking about. Never. And number 3, when at all possible, insult his family. So you're first, you've ticked him off, and then you can sit back like a radio terrorist and watch this conflagration ensue. So I did this just as a hobby.
Where did you start?
Tampa, Florida.
Can you remember the first time?
Radio?
Yes.
Just kidding.
Yes.
Well, yes, as a matter of fact. But it was when I was 11, but that was a different story. But yes, I do remember. It was Jack Anderson. Jack Anderson was the first person I called, and it was a station called WPLP, I think it was, 570 AM. And I didn't even know what AM radio was. I was cleaning a tub. This is stupid. I had this radio on, and AM radio was, to me, 2 things. One was, and música latina con gorra con Budweiser, you know. So I said, what is this? And it was this talk radio show, and I called up and I asked an inane question. I thought, that's not very much fun. So I called back again and basically let him have it.
This was Jack Anderson, not the national Jack Anderson, or was it?
This was the columnist, yes. And I thought this was fun.
How old were you?
Oh, 22, 3, whatever it is. Yeah, I guess 22, 3. I just started law school, just playing around with this. And then later on, I found out that they didn't. When I called up, they never gave names to people. They just said, okay, the Bronx. Let's go to Cherry Hill. You're on. And I thought, Cherry Hill. There's no personality to that. So I happened to pick this. I was watching this movie, just happened to have it on the day before, Scarecrow with Gene Hackman and Al Pacino, and there was a character named Lionel. And it was in my head. And they said, what is your name? I said, Lionel. Okay, that's my name. So I went on and spewed my bile and called back again. They recognized my voice, which is easy to recognize. Somebody said it's like Curly Howard on Benzedrine, Joe Pesci on helium, whatever. So the person said, oh, this is Lionel. I said, oh, yeah, right, yeah, sure, whatever. And then that stuck.
And your maiden name, your original name.
Hiawatha Lipschitz. But I'd rather not get into that. No, my real name is Michael LeBron. And if it wasn't for LeBron James, yeah. So, but nobody, and people want to know that. I was on MSNBC one time, and they said, we have to know your name. I said, it's. Do you ask Sting? Not that I'm in the same category. Do you put Gordon Sumner? And they said, well, Lionel what? I said, there is no what. It's this poor girl's 20 years old. She goes, what do you mean there's no last? You have no last name? I said, I'm anonymous. And the best line ever was, it was an Indian cab driver in New York. Imagine that. And he said, he recognized me. He says, what is your name? I said, Lionel. He goes, Lionel what? I said, well, there's no what. He says, oh, like God. And I said, yes, like God. So that's my name, Lionel, one name, like God.
How many times did you call a call-in show before you had your own?
A couple of years. It was maybe, 5 years, 6 years. What happened was, it was a great fellow, poor man. His name was Bob Schumann. He was at WFLA 970. WFLA, and he was the program director. And his wife, Cindy, I believe, said, why don't you get this guy who's calling? They already know who he is. Put him on the air. It's a built-in audience. And it was a small, So I got a call from him, and they said, would you like to meet and talk about this? And I was really unsure. I said, look, I've got to use the name Lionel. I don't want to use my real name. And I don't want to solicit for, legal stuff, which I hate lawyer commercials. Are you injured? Do you know somebody who wants to be injured? Would you like to be injured? We fight for you. I didn't want to have it look like that. So I met with him, and I knew that weekend programming oftentimes was subject to barter and trade, where somebody will come in and he sells vitamins and pays, the station X amount. So I thought I'd have to pay something. This is true. I didn't know anything. So I showed up with a friend of mine. We were lawyers. I said, wear a tie. Look like you know what we're talking about. And when it came time to money, they wanted me to do a 4-hour show, Sundays, 3 to 7. And they said, we should talk about money. I said, yes, it's a good idea. He said, well, what do you think's fair? And in a brilliant piece of negotiating, I said, well, what do you think's fair? And he said, $100. And I said, oh. He said, well, that's all we can pay you. I said, what? I'm not kidding. I said, you're going to pay me? What a country. So let me get this straight. I'm going to come into your station, spend 4 hours having the time of my life, risking your license and lawsuits, radio tyro, and you're going to pay me $25? It's a deal. So I went in and I brought sandwiches and my friends. My mother was taking a photography class at the time. I said, take pictures of me because next week I'm not on the radio. This can't happen. Walked in, the programmer said, this is the button, this is the dump button. This is very important. 7 seconds. They say something, naughty, and then we'll see you at 7. And that was it. That was October of '88. And then January of '89, they said, how would you like to do middays, 9 to noon? And I said, I'm not working for $100. I upped it up. I upped the price considerably. And then 7 months later, I did Afternoon Drive in '89. So when people ask me, how do you get into radio? I said, just wait. They'll call you. As they did. And the rest is history.
Now, I think the world can be divided in the listen and listen not. I'm a listener to all talk radio, all sides. And I, unfortunately, have had to hear you in the middle of the night.
Think of my relatives feel.
When can people hear you do your live show and where?
Well, right now, I'm syndicated through the Air America family, if you will. In Washington, it's Afternoon Drive, 3 to 6. It could be 9 to noon. It could be delayed broadcast. It could be online at either airamerica.com or lionelonline.com. If I could just say something about how the industry has changed, we have not only do we have regular terrestrial radio with, the stick, as it were, but there's online radio, there's podcasting. People can listen when they want, appointment radio. They can watch a video of me do it. They can chat while I'm talking, while they're watching me. They can then hear it. It's the old days when you were Rush Limbaugh, you were on from noon to 3, and that's it. And if you weren't in that city at that time, that's all changed. So, in fact, if you go to a Radio Shack, ask them to buy a radio and watch what they say. They'll look at you like you've asked for a Fosteris modulator. So the world has changed tremendously in terms of the delivery system.
Are you carried on XM or Sirius?
It's a good question. They just merged. It was on, I don't know. I don't know. Go check.
You live where full time?
In New York. Hell's Kitchen.
You were born and raised in Florida?
Tampa.
Graduate?
Second generation.
What undergrad school?
Went to University of South Florida, affectionately known at, yes, Harvard and Hillsborough. We went there, yes.
Hillsborough County.
Mm-hmm.
Law school at Stetson.
Stetson.
What year did you get your law degree?
83.
So it's 83 to 88, and then you're in this business.
Right. Because I was a prosecutor. I got out of law school in 83, went to work, did the calling while I was doing it, using that nom de guerre, whatever. As long as it was a speakerphone, I could do whatever I wanted to and then be,
As a listener, I correct me if I'm wrong, I hear you have the most fun and go off the most often on the media.
Absolutely.
On media that would be defined as conservative and liberal. What is it that, what punches your button?
The advent of 24/7 has, I don't know, Brian, what the analogy would be, but it's not fast food, it's not catnip, it's pre-digest. The mother bird who has to pre-digest the worms to give it to that's what it is. It's 24/7, and it is absolutely, to me, hysterical. Fox, you can say whatever you want about Fox. Fox has no predecessor. You know precisely what you're going to get. My latest fun network is MSNBC, which is just, and I agree with a lot of what they're saying, but it is, I'm 50, and I remember the old days of, opinion reporting, reportage, or, this is Huntley Brinkley, NBC, Sandra Van Oker, Frank McGee, that Huntley Brinkley, they would roll over in their graves or they are, I should say.
One is still alive. So.
Gerald Ford one time said, if Abraham Lincoln were alive today, I think he said this, he'd roll over in his grave, which is kind of tough. I hope Sandra Van Oker is still with us.
I think he is.
Okay, very good. So what I'm seeing right now is this absolutely incredible Chris Matthews in these homoerotic paeans to Fred Thompson. You have Keith Olbermann, who is doing this, trying to channel Edward R. Murrow, and I think is just, frankly, nothing short of a scandalous purloining of this valedictory, good night and good luck. What's the matter? And that's the way it is? Was that taken? And yet I see this absolute Obama-centric reporting, and I'm going to vote for Obama. I don't mind it. I am in awe of what I'm seeing. I cannot believe this. That this is Fox News. I don't expect anything from them. That's what there is no NBC to Fox. There is no to see this nouveau reporting, bring in Tom Brokaw and suggest that maybe he should kind of move to the side. Oh, it's an internecine battle that is fascinating.
How do you? I must say, you mentioned earlier when I first started finding you on the dial, it was your voice that I heard, and it is different.
Yes. As is scurvy.
No,
It's
but I mean, it's
different
just a different sounding radio voice.
Absolutely.
How do you distinguish yourself? You know, when you sit down at that console every day, what is it you do that's different than everybody else?
I don't listen to radio. I don't like talk radio. I don't. Let me give you an example. There in the 60s, there was a type of radio person called, affectionately, the puker, and it was a kind of voice like this: 7 after the hour, taking you home, that kind of. And I laugh at these people. And I would imagine that one of the best ways that we could stop childhood pregnancy is to have them explain the sex act like that. A man becomes excited and aroused 8 after the hour. Coming out, you know, it's just kids would say, you know what, I just don't want to. So a lot of the people would get into talk radio from that point of view. I've worked with people who, for whatever reason, would punctuate sometimes the most serious discussions with the time, which I thought was not really that important. But you're saying, you know, as far as I'm concerned, the Holocaust is the darkest, 8 after the hour. You know, why? So I'm anti-radio. I don't want to be like these people. Don't want to talk like them.
So you don't listen to others, and
No.
so you have no idea what anybody else is talking about.
No. Frankly, this may be a surprise. I don't care what people have to say. There are very few opinions that I listen to and say, wow, that's really good. I think I go more for print, and especially now during the election, there are very few people, because what I'm hearing is just a regurgitation of nothing. Lipstick Gate with Sarah Palin. Oh my God, that, you know, all day long with that. Nobody's really tackling the electoral process, which I find more interesting. Save, of course, believe it or not, Mike Huckabee, I believe his name is. Not Mike Huckabee, Mike Murphy, and Pat Buchanan. They are the most interesting when it comes to dissecting the process of the election and not just being cheerleaders for one side or another.
This book, Everyone's Crazy Except You and Me, and I'm Not So Sure About You, America's Favorite Contrarian Cuts Loose, published by Hyperion. Isn't that a Disney product? Why the book?
Well, I put out the word that I'm interested in writing a book. If you've ever gone into a Barnes & Noble or a Borders, you'll find out that everybody's written a book. I talked to my managers. I said, you know, I think now is about time. I think I should enter the world of authorhood and weigh in. And I didn't want to do the typical, you know, why liberals are stupid or why. There's a lot in here which I wanted to discuss. Everybody has a book or something in them. They want to just, these are a series of little essays, sometimes 2 pages, nothing that deep. But I wanted to tackle some civil libertarian issues, hate crimes, which I hate, and the death penalty, which I abhor, but not for why people. Then I have an ode, a paean, if you will, to professional wrestling, which changed my life. I almost killed my sister with a Hoover upright. That's true.
That, by the way, I want and this is way off the subject. Tell the story about your sister.
I've always wanted to just. My sister was the first person that I victimized as a child. She's 2 years younger than me.
2 years younger.
And I told her, for example, that she was adopted and the police brought her, which I thought added a little flavor, something different. The police brought you. Why? Penalty or something? And I told her that she had arthritis. I convinced her of that as a child. She was very skinny. One time she had eczema on her arm. I convinced her that during an episode, which she cannot remember because of the trauma, she stuck her arm in a barbecue pit and burned her arm and just would torment her for reasons, bless her heart. And she's survived somewhat. On my 12th birthday, I was vacuuming, and my sister had long hair, which she was trying to grow for her entire life. My sister hair grew at a snail's pace, and she tried everything to look at that time like Cher. Everything from putting on wigs to towels to... So finally she got her hair long enough. I was vacuuming with an upright Hoover. Now, Brian, we're talking 1970s nuclear Hoover with beaters and nothing. We're not talking the Auric. We're talking this thing could pick up cannonballs if you wanted. And as she was looking under the couch for something, her hair was on the rug, and I said, oh, hair, Hoover, hair, Hoover. Let's see. And I can remember to this day the sound, and the smell of an electric motor. And my sister mimicking Al Pacino in the horrid Godfather 3, or the shriek, you know, Max. It was, and I thought the fact that my mother did not kill me, and this was minutes before my party was to start. My mother said, we're going to have to cut your hair. My sister was screaming hysterically. They unraveled the hair from the beater. She had a unique wave to it, kind of a waffle wave. My mother threw me outside and demanded of my guests to my party who were showing up with gifts not to talk to me. It was a rather terse birthday. And my mother sang happy birthday in a mode that was devoid of any humanity. It was just gritting, grinding. Needless to say, I'll never forget August 26, 1970.
Where is
a day that will live in infamy.
Where is your mom?
They're still alive and kicking.
Your father?
Same.
What kind of background did they have?
He was a lawyer, but never practiced. He was in the wholesale liquor industry. It was a family business. He had an illustrious career. You know, we talk about John McCain and what he did for his country, but my father served his country in a way that was so horrible he can't even speak of it. He was chief cashiers of the officers' mess, wore Hawaiian shirts, and played poker during his tenure serving our great country. He has, of course, the only medal of a full house with old oak leaf clusters. He never carried a gun, played poker in service of his country. Proudly, I might add.
And your mom?
Housewife, then became a nurse, and back to being a housewife. My source could tell a story better than anybody. Really gave me the love of words, you know, just arcane words. I love to use words that make people say, what?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, I'm going to quote you here in a few minutes, some words that I needed an explanation on. Your sister, by the way, before we leave that topic, does she still speak to you today, and where does she live and what does she do?
She's in a witness protection program. She was involved later on, troubled, white-collar crime mostly. No, she's fine. She's married, and I've got another little sister who's 10 years younger who I let go. But seriously, you know, when you're a kid, the only person you can talk to, and I'm the eldest, is your sister, and of course you, or your sibling, and she was a source of constant amusement. By the way, another thing I found out was I lived in Florida, which is, well, I call it Florida, F-L-A-W-D-A, Boca, South Beach. That's where you go. I'm from Tampa, which is nice, but it would be so ungodly hot in the summers. We would play hide and go seek, and I wouldn't go look for her, and she'd be out there waiting. And she'd come up to the door, and I'd say, oh, there you are. I said, you know, you're not going to win. Are you looking for me? Of course I'm looking for you. I'm starting here, of course. And so, bless her heart.
I did see a reference once in your book to your Sicilian background.
Yes, the only ethnicity I knew growing up was my grandmother, Angelina, and her sisters, Sicilian. Her family initially was from Santo Stefano via Argentina. Don't go there, but she apparently, it seems that perhaps my great-grandfather may have had to leave Sicily for reasons that we'd rather not get into. Even though he's been dead for many years, the stain on our family is still so fresh. But yes, the only thing I ever knew was hearing my aunts speak this. It was, Sundays were exactly like you heard, you know, this incredible cacophony of loud. And my grandfather was, he spoke only Spanish. My grandmother spoke Spanish, Sicilian, and English, and my father's trilingual also. So that was yeah. And Tampa was a very, and still is, was a group of Cuban cigar makers. Both of them were cigar makers. Put my father through college and law school, and there was a great Sicilian influence there. So it was a very interesting multicultural city.
Air America, Al Franken, who was on Air America, is running for the Senate in Minnesota. Mark Green is involved here, ran for mayor several times in New York City. Who owns Air America?
I cannot give you the exact structure right now, but it has been repurchased, restructured, reconstituted, and some very capable people are now running the show, in addition to Mark Green, Charlie Kirker, Bennett Zier, Bill Hess, Radio Pros. It has a tremendous name brand. You tell people that, and they just, they could have sworn, didn't they go bankrupt? And I'm saying, wait a minute, didn't Lehman Brothers go bankrupt? Oh, yes, that's right. Well, Air America's still here. Lehman Brothers is not.
Who's on it now?
Who's Lehman Brothers?
No.
I have no idea.
Who's on Air America? Who are the other talk show hosts?
Well, other than me, there's Rachel Maddow, who is the star, the newest star of MSNBC, and deservedly so. We have a fellow named Tom Hartman.
He's from Portland.
Richard Green, John Elliott, Bobby Kennedy Jr. I'm trying to think. We have weekend programming, Mark Green, Ariana Huffington, Mike Papantonio, just a variety of, just a veritable hodgepodge, if you will.
Somebody who used to be on Air America sat in that chair once when we chatted was Randy Rhodes. What happened to her? She's still on. I know I can still hear her in Washington, but she's not on Air America anymore.
No, she's not. She's moved on to other pastures. I hope greener. Still broadcasting. I don't know. Nobody consulted with me. I like her a lot. She's a good friend of mine, and I don't know.
The reason I ask is, if you believe what you read, she got fired for remarks she made off stage, off microphone, on stage in San Francisco. And the reason I bring it up is that
why are you bringing this up? I'm just kidding.
No, but how far can you go? I mean, and do you worry about what you say? For instance, would you not criticize Rachel Maddow because she's on Air America, but you would go after Keith Olbermann?
Well, one of the things, as far as Randy, and I'm giving you a Bible or a Quran or Talmud or whatever you have, nobody consulted with me. I really couldn't tell you what happened and who did what or whatever. I know it's because of things said. Second question is, are you worried about what you're saying? Well, within reason. I mean, not really.
But you don't seem to in the book.
No.
You sound off.
But as far as Rachel Maddow goes, well, one thing is, first of all, I believe in being collegial. And I don't think it's a good idea, if you have your druthers, why are you going to go after somebody that you work with? I mean, if Rachel did something really preposterous, yeah, I would. But frankly, she doesn't, and I'm a big fan of her, so that's very easy. Olbermann's a different story, because he's in the news, and I am an observer like anybody else is, because what he does is absolutely, incredibly brilliant. But what I find fascinating about him is that he and Bill O'Reilly are chiral opposites. Look how many ways they're similar. Both of them large, both of them, I don't want to say filled with themselves, but a great ego and listen to me. Both of them from backgrounds where they want recognition. Bill O'Reilly from, I don't know what, he was the current edition where he either won the Polk or the Peabody or something. Either when he was with it, who knows? Keith from ESPN. Now both of them societal forces. Also, going after each other. I love it. That's professional wrestling. That's a shoot. I mean, you can't beat that. And meanwhile, there's poor Chris Matthews, who I don't know what he's talking about. Have you ever heard him go off on a rant about, he was talking about Fred Thompson one time. And I swear to you, I don't know what he was, Fred Thompson didn't know. He says, and when you see Fred, and he has this wonderful, you got to watch Chris Matthews. I'm a mouth person. He collects this saliva. You know, at any time it's going to just hit the. He says, don't watch that Fred Thompson, because you can just smell the aqua velva, the English leather, the smell of dried shaving cream, and an old dictionary. I don't know what he's talking about. I said, He says, Fred Thompson. He goes off into these rants, and I'm sorry, but I love him. When he talked about his feeling for Barack Obama, he felt something go up his leg. I have yet to figure that one out. I think perhaps therapy may be in order for Chris, but that's just fun to watch.
Well, as you know, since 1978, when Larry King started the national radio talk show, it's proliferated. It's everywhere. There's tons of them. But when you watch what's happened in it, and that's why I want to go back to your own technique, the more controversial you are, the more confrontational you are, the better it gets for you. The ratings go up. Just look at the television thing. The Lou Dobbs, the Keith Olbermann, even Chris Matthews, the ratings go up.
You can say there is no, and I don't want there to be, there is no truth meter. Here's a classic one. This is just as an example. If we have time, and by the way, may I just say, God bless this format. And dare I say, a format like maybe a Charlie Rose, where you don't have to say, thank you very much. Thank you very much. I haven't said anything. That, coming up next, that format ugh. But here's an example that I will never forget. Bill O'Reilly, who just, so much fun to watch. I don't really watch him that much anymore, but when he makes a beautiful statement, he was saying something to the effect, either he or others were discussing the fact that, we're tired of hearing women suggest that maybe abortion should be safe for them, especially when there's a risk of the mother dying. There's no risk involved in pregnancy. You would think that the earth would fly into the sun, where somebody would say, wait a minute, forget about dropping an epithet or a dreaded F-bomb. This is worse. This is a factual inaccuracy that really is. And of course, there's a topic, pregnancy and preeclampsia. That's no big deal. Cut to the other one. Sean Hannity, who was a friend of mine and colleague.
Friend, when you say friend,
I was at WABC. And we were
in New York.
Yeah. Oh, and by the way, I don't know Bill from Adam, but Sean Hannity, Mark Levin, Rush Limbaugh, we worked together. Nice people. When we go to conventions, Talkers Magazine has them. It's professional wrestling. He's the heel, we're the baby face. This is come on, we're off the clock. They're fine. Some people take it too seriously. But Sean, remember Terry Schiavo?
Sure.
Terry Schiavo, who had the persistent vegetative state. And I'm no neurologist. But when I saw her in that terrible, with that maw, that rictus, she was paralyzed. She was not smiling. She was not smiling. And I think anybody with an Ort sense would realize that she's not smiling. So he went down there and says, come on, she's tracking the ball. She's fine. Of course, neurologist after neurologist. And I'm thinking to myself, my God, Bill O'Reilly's an OBGYN. Sean Hannity's a neurologist. You hear people, Glenn Beck never ceases to amaze me. The what? Steve Ducey on Fox and Friends. I am convinced they must sit around in the morning, either throw a few back and say, can you give me something insane to say? I've got one for you. Write this down. Say that when Barack Obama and Michelle did this, that it's a terrorist bump. Good, I like that. That's insane. Go for it. Because it's the only reason that I could think these people would ever say this. But there's no repercussions. And maybe if you're too down the middle or too, it was my BlackBerry, don't worry. Which, by the way, we found that today John McCain invented the BlackBerry. Did you hear that? Did you? You will. Bless his heart. But the stuff that they say that's just wrong, but I've gotten used to it.
But take it a step further. I mean, go back to the ratings game. The ratings for all of these folks you're mentioning have gone up.
Oh, yes.
Down. So do the people on the other end, and you talk to them, they call you, do they believe them? Or do they listen to them because they agree with them? I mean, give us what's the psychology of all this, and why does it work?
I don't know. One thing is, let me give you another question, which is a bigger question, which people in the industry will ask. And that is, does liberal, I hate these terms, but does liberal radio work? Or progressive radio, does it work?
That's Air America.
Right. Well, or that's what the perception of it is. I'm telling you, I've been doing the same show for 20 years, and you can call it Zoroastrian for all I care. I don't care. It's up to you. And the idea is that what people forget about Rush and Sean and name it and Glenn Beck, their opinions notwithstanding, they are great broadcasters, and they're funny, and they're entertaining, and people, you know, I keep telling people, it's the messenger, stupid. It's not the message. You can take a script from a Rush Limbaugh show, commit it to memory, repeat it next week. You're not going to get any ratings. It's him. For whatever it's worth. I don't know. I can't explain golf. I can't explain sushi. I can't explain NASCAR. But they're very popular. And what people forget, what detractors of these folks forget, is that they're great broadcasters and they know what they're doing. You know, Paul Newman is a hero of mine, and what he did with his hole-in-the-wall business and salad dressing, raise money for kids stricken with cancer. Paul Newman realized that before a kid gets $1, he better know about oil and vinegar ratios. And what people forget is that why these people are successful is that they're great broadcasters first. Their message, yeah, that's important. But people thought, there were some periods of time, I'm sorry, where some liberal lions came forward, like Mario Cuomo did a radio show. Let me just put it to you this way. If ever they stop waterboarding, I suggest having a continuous loop tape of old Mario Cuomo shows. They'll talk in a moment. Alan Dershowitz did a radio show. Oh my God. I'd rather watch a trailer hitch rust than, I'd rather drink bleach than listen to this. It was awful. Whereas the message I agreed with, but the delivery was just, it was moribund at best.
A lot of people point to the 1987 revocation of the Fairness Doctrine as when it all began, where people didn't have to worry about equal time, or even they could go all conservative if they wanted to. A lot of liberals in Washington in politics are calling for the reestablishment of the Fairness Doctrine.
Better be careful what you ask for, because number one, I've learned this, and maybe you have. Be very careful about great sounding laws. The Fairness Doctrine, the Patriot Act. No child left behind. The better it sounds, the more you should be frightened. We live in a society, unfortunately, where who's fair? What does that mean? What is the other side? From a legal point of view, from a definitional standard, I'm not sure. Will we have to stop a show if Rush Limbaugh says, for example, I think that John McCain is the best candidate? Stop! Now, for the opposing side, it's going to kill radio. And also, very frankly, if you want to compete, build another radio station, just like with newspapers and the like. I understand that when you're on the opposite end of this Murdoch mania, I understand that it frustrates you. It's like, my God, he owns everything. Isn't there something we can do? I'm very, very careful. I'm very, very leery and very frightened of very serious First Amendment issues, which I address. Have you heard of I'm using your term, liberals talk about lobbying? We've got to do something about lobbying in Washington. That sounds good. What if the lobbyist is PETA or Greenpeace or the Sierra Club? What about that? It's different. Be very careful what you ask for, because were there to be a change, and were there to be a sudden seismic change in radio, and it was all Air America all the time, would you want that Fairness Doctrine in place then? I don't think so.
Let me just dip into your book and read a couple.
You go ahead.
Simple minds have construed the world's greatest novel, the Bible, as fact. You can hear people right out there right now just falling right off the couch when they hear that. No rational person, no one of rudimentary education, no person with a scintilla of common sense could possibly believe that, poor emphasis, Adam and Eve, ? Please. I could go on, but what's your point? You don't believe in the Bible?
I think there were some great quotes in the New Testament. Do unto others, great. But Adam and Eve, I'm a retired Catholic. I was raised Catholic, and I have nothing but the utmost respect for my teachers and priests at the time, Jesuit priests, but they made me think. And I remember even as a child thinking, Adam and Eve, The first two people ever, Adam and Eve. And Adam and Eve have Cain and Abel. And there was this guy Seth, which they don't talk about. And Cain slays Abel. Now we got Adam and Eve and Cain. Where did the Koreans come from? It was just a thought I had. This doesn't make any sense. Well, they were over there. No, there was nobody over there. I think to myself, you know, maybe, just maybe, folks, this might have been a parable. I don't think people would have been too hip to DNA and the double helix back then. And I think maybe we shouldn't take this literally. I don't think the Earth is 6,000 years old. I just don't. And by the way, you can believe all you want. It's a free country. I think people will laugh at the Quran. People made fun of Mitt Romney wearing the magic underwear. I'm thinking, what's so funny about that? Noah's Ark is still mind-boggling to me. That this go through what this, and when you ask people, do you mean literally that Noah and his family, everybody's wiped out, and he better have two of every species, man and female, on that ark? As Bill Cosby said, what's an ark? But anyway, and then after the waters receded, where'd the Koreans come from? You know, and people sometimes maybe in their own, I don't know, ignorance or insecurity will say, no, this has to be correct. But yet they'll laugh at the Quran, they'll laugh at the Book of Mormon. Everybody else is funny. There's a group called GodHatesShrimp.com, and they look at Leviticus and Exodus, and they're very specific prohibitions and proscriptions against eating non-scaled fish. And their motto is, pinch the head, suck the tail, burn in hell. And the point is that they took this very, very literal prohibition in the Old Testament, and they pick at red lobsters and to show that. And yet people will say, oh, that's silly. I think, in my humble opinion, and you're entitled to whatever you think, but I have my right to say this, I think anybody who actually believes in Adam and Eve and creation as an absolute fact is, and this is important, acceptably insane. We'll give you a pass on that one. If you walk around going on the street, we might want to talk to you. But we collectively have allowed people to agree in this mythology. And we're not going to arrest you for this. But Stephen Jay Gould said that there are non-overlapping magisteria. You can believe in religion and you can believe in science. Creationism does not in any way is it backed by science. I don't care what anybody says. Evolution, Pope Pius XII, John Paul II, or J.P. Deuce as I call him, and Benedict XVI, through encyclicals, the Catholic Church has said that evolution, and these are not liberal, these are pretty doctrinaire, that evolution is a perfectly viable explanation for the development of mankind, as long as you believe that the final product is imbued with God. But Adam and Eve, come on. I'm not going to ask you what you believe in, but you're far too smart for that.
Here's another. No one wants to confront death as it is. Why not make stuff up? So we do. All of us. When we're afraid, we make things up. We create a religion, a belief system, you name it, reincarnation, heaven, nirvana, the resurrection, transcendental whatever, anything to not address the fact that, as far as anyone can tell, as far as we've heard from those who have died, there is nothing to death but the cosmic poof. You write a lot about that.
There is if you cannot see, oh, death fascinates me like you cannot believe. And the reason is that mankind, human, our natural reflex is to see patterns and trends and things. And the locus of control is another issue that we have. There was some guy years ago, I don't know his name, but it's Neanderthal or wherever, and he was walking around in a field probably. And just imagine this. The man at his earliest, Adam and Eve notwithstanding, imagine man at his earliest sentient form who looks up and says, what the heck is this? Imagine the first time they saw lightning and thunder. Is it not normal for somebody to say, you know, I think there's something up there? Why? Because there's this lightning and it hits trees and kills animals, and I don't know. And then man goes a step further. If I'm here just as a cork bobbing on the ocean and there's no control to this, there's no plan, this is some accident, then that locus of control, L-O-C-U-S, is elsewhere. And I don't like that. I want things to make sense. So, maybe through ignorance at first, or maybe it's just a self-defense mechanism, we created some things. Nobody wants to think of mom and dad dying, rotting in some grave. We want there to be heavens and angels and harps. The idea that their spirit, my favorite, lives on. It's understandable. I remember as a kid looking, this is my parents were very good about explaining death to me. They said, this is what happens. And then uncle died, and it seemed kind of odd to me. He had glasses on him. And I asked my mother, I said, why does Uncle Joe have glasses? He goes, because that's what they remembered him as. I said, but he's dead. Yes, but Uncle Joe always wore glasses. I said, not when he went to bed. Uncle Joe also breathed. He's dead. Don't you know that the fact that his name is on the door outside, and miraculously they all showed up? No, and it was the first introduction of seeing how we put a suit on him, for God's sakes. And we say, he looks so good. No, he doesn't. He's dead. So we, through our insecurity, our fear, we want there to be something more. We historically concoct these wonderful stories. Let's face it, it's better to think that than what I think, and I'm open for dispute. If there is a God up there with a harp and all my relatives, I'm all for it. I'll be pleasantly surprised. But something tells me this is the Disneyfication of reality.
Throughout your book, you have Lionel Law, and then you have a special comment or two on what you call your law. There exists an inverse proportionality between the size of one's lapel flag pen and his intelligence.
Absolutely.
What do you mean?
We have, in fact, there's some wonderful theses that have been posited by people that shows that we are right now actually in a form of a fascistic, nationalistic society. Not fascism like Mussolini, but nationalism. Post 9/11, we love symbols. We just, iconic, the semiotics of patriotism. And we had as a debate, as a question, why does Barack Obama have a flag lapel pin? And I noticed that after 9/11, especially being here in New York, they were enormous. I mean, people couldn't drive because their 9/11, their flag is in their way. And then there were ribbons. And I was convinced that, they said, we fought for that flag. And here's a great topic. I advocated that there should be no law which penalizes you criminally for burning said flag. Why you want to do that is beyond me, but you should have a law against burning the Constitution. That's really the law. Well, this became a fetish of ours. And people, Sean Hannity, bless his heart. By the way, that's a Southern affectation, which means, as long as you append a statement with bless his heart, you can get away with murder. But he said, don't you understand, his books, Amber Ways of Grain, From Sea to Shining Sea, Deliver Us from Evil, and we're missing the whole point. Again, symbolism. We love it. We love saints and crosses, and we will and I found out that the people who really were overtly the greatest patriots, don't you love your country? I used to get that. Tend to have the least rudimentary, fundamental understanding of what the history of this country is, and what classic separation of church and state. First Amendment, Bill of Rights, not a clue. But that flag's up there.
In your book, you mention a son. I don't see any reference to a wife.
No.
Not married.
Not married.
Son.
Son.
How old?
14 years old.
Where does he live?
He lives in the California area.
Is he like you? Does he have a sister that he's put to the Hoover vacuum?
No, he does not. No, he does not. I think he has a sense of humor like me. I think there's something to be said for that. And when I mean sense of humor, it doesn't mean funny per se. It means somebody who can appreciate, who can see that something is funny and recognizes the absurdity of something. which I think he has, which I hope he has. Because what I do is, I would like to be the editorial cartoon and not the editorial. I like to see what's wrong with something, and I think it involves a higher order of understanding, and I think he's got that.
Air America, is it going to make it?
I believe so, yes.
But I mean, you know, we've watched the process of bankruptcy and selling and reselling and all
well,
that.
I'll tell you what. I'll tell you what I see now, and and this is not just wishful thinking. In the latest incarnation of it, there are people who understand the business of radio. And you understand that there is more, this is not an ideology, it has to be treated like a radio network, a radio company that has affiliates. And before you get to any ideology or what have you, you have to have that structure.
How many towns are you in, by the way?
Me?
Yeah.
I have no idea. I honestly don't know. I don't know.
More than 30, less than 30? Or, I mean,
At this point, maybe less than 30, but it's hard, again, because we have, right now, there's Air America Media, which is going to, its platform is going to be not just terrestrial radio stations, but the website itself and podcasting and that sort of thing. Because in, I don't know, whatever period of time coming up, the notion of classic radio, as we say, is always going to be here, but it's going to be in different forms. But going back to your question, what happened initially was there was, I think, some very, very sincere people who wanted to come up with an idea that countered what they perceived to be conservative talk radio.
So their initial effort was political.
Right. Well, political, or to come up with a counter answer, whether that's your strategy, whether that's Fox News, when it came up with its idea, was a political idea as well, but you have to have a theme to it. The NASCAR channel has a theme. And what happened was, I think the initial incarnation of this company did not have the radio backing, the background that it does now. We've got some very serious people, as I mentioned, Charlie Kirker and Bennett Zier and Bill Hess, Scott Elberg, a lot of people who know how radios work. And before what I see very favorable now is, before the message gets out, they have to understand radio. Like I said, Paul Newman never gave a kid $1 until he figured out the rudiments of salad making. So these are our, dare I say, our salad days, perhaps.
In this book you do, I'm just going to go through a bunch of them very quickly. We don't have a whole lot of time, but I couldn't care less.
Oh.
I couldn't care less. You particularly are upset about the word irregardless.
Oh.
Why?
Well, you know, technically speaking, it is a word. It is okay. It is not preferred. I love that, not preferred. What drives me crazy is when people say, I could care less. I have become a stickler, not a stickler, but a worrywart, perhaps, of how we're losing our mother tongue. And if you want to see something right now, just go to any blog. Just go and read what people write. We are losing the ability to write. The word like has so infected, I'd say people from 35 and younger, has so affected our vocabulary that people will start off a question with like. That's like starting off a speech with however. And the texting, I mean, I'm all for Blackberries and all that stuff, but I was under the illusion, or delusion perhaps, that when we got into emails, our words would be who we are. But not anymore. We're texting and we're bifurcating and we're minimalizing and how are you?
Hate crime.
Hate crime is the most unconstitutional concept that people applaud without thinking about it. Hate crime is the aggrandizing or the aggravation of a crime that is already cognizable at law merely because you have expressed an idea in conjunction with that which is already against the law. So if you have two people, both of them are charged with hitting somebody. This person hit somebody because he was mad. This person hit his victim because the victim was Jewish. We say, aha, right off the bat, this is a felony, this is a misdemeanor, because you dare to evince a thought, a motivation, a desire that we don't like. If you want to get people, take them at sentencing and treat them accordingly.
At this point in the program, people, I think, would be surprised to learn you're a stutterer. Mm-hmm. When did it start?
Started, I don't know when, but it was a childhood. And I had one nun who pulled me and a friend of mine out of school and said, "We think you're retarded." And I said, "I don't think I'm retarded," but it was a a really tough thing. And what I did was I tried to, as Nietzsche said, you know, what does not destroy me? I figured, well, I'm going to show him. I went into talk radio and trial law and did that. But I had to rework how I speak and how I think. And you'd be surprised the stutterers that are in Hollywood. And I heard John Wayne was. There was a rhythmic, there are ways, little tricks you can use. And what's worst about mine is every stutterer has a trick word, has a trigger word. Mine is L. So my name, Michael, ends in an L. LeBron starts in an L. I was doomed.
Because and then you add to it Lionel.
You know, I never thought about it until now.
Starts and ends.
Yeah. Well, some people never learn. And there was this 5th grade when the nun would say, everybody stand up and say, you know, your name. And I remember, oh my God, I could hear my heart, you know, beating and thinking, oh God, what do I do? So I got up and I thought to myself, you know, James Bond, James Bond. So I came up with some way of saying it and realized that you could, you know, kind of get around it. But by the way, if ever you run into a stutterer, please do not complete their sentence. They know this. And don't bring it up.
Before we close, I haven't heard any stuttering at all. Have you stuttered during this last hour?
Yeah, a couple times. I slow down. And I can also feel it. It's almost like an aura. It's almost analogous to epilepsy, you know, or migraine. There are days when I wake up and I feel it. So I've got to be very careful. And if you adjust your cadence, if you sing it, if you use a different accent, if you become more rhythmic, if you put little words between words that only you can hear, you can get around it.
Prediction: who will win the presidential election, and who do you want? You said it earlier, but who do you, and you feel strongly about pro-Obama?
Yeah, I think that he's. I'll tell you, I'm very, very frightened about this. There were two things. And by the way, if the election were held today, when we're taping this, I think the electoral map shows that Obama would have it. But we've had no debates either with Palin or with Obama. Here's what scares me, and what concerns me. Number one, I think there is a silent faction of people in this country who answer poll questions like they do a civics test. I think there is a racist element out there whose ugly head I hope we don't see. But I'm very frightened about what I hear people say, people who believe he's a Muslim, people who might want to go for the status quo, something they're used to. I don't know. This is a referendum on our country. This is a Rorschach test on us. If Barack Obama loses, it's about us.
If people want to listen to you, what's the website?
You can go to airamerica.com or lionelonline.com.
The book is called Everyone's Crazy Except You and Me, and I'm not so sure about you. Lionel, thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
For a DVD copy of this program, call 1-877-662-7726. For free transcripts or to give us your comments about this program, visit us at qna.org. Q&A programs are also available as C-SPAN podcasts.